A Canada Museum Guide. Chapter 1. A Canadian Museum Website Guide. Canadian Museum Websites. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/list_of_museums_in_Canada. chin.gc.ca, Canadian Heritage. pch.gc.ca, Parks and Heritage. Museums.ca, Canadian Museums Association. Museumsofcanada.com, a shopping site, nothing about museums. Virtualmuseum.ca. Canadian Conservation Institute, CCI. cci-icc.gc.ca. Canadian Heritage Information Network, CHIN. chin.gc.ca. Canadian Museums Association, CMA. Museums.ca. Canada Council for the Arts. 350 Albert Street. Pub 1047. Ottawa, on K1P5V8. Canada. CanadaCouncil.ca. Canadian Museums Association. 280 Metcalfe Street No. 400. Ottawa, on K2P1R7. Canada. Museums.ca. Canada Museum websites at dmoz.odp.org/regional/north_america/canada/arts_and_entertainment/museums. Subcategories. Alberta, British Columbia, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan. Art, automobiles, aviation, children's. Historic houses. History. Living history and open air. Maritime. Military. Natural history. Related categories. Regional North America Canada travel and tourism attractions. rcip-chin.gc.ca, Canadian Heritage Information Network, Guide to Canadian Museums and Galleries provided by an agency within the Federal Department of Canadian Heritage. HistoryMuseum.ca, Canadian Museum of History, information for visitors, and also many online exhibits about Canadian history, military history, native peoples, folk culture, archaeology, and ancient civilizations. Centre.nikkeiplace.org, Nikkei National Museum and Cultural Center, a non-profit organization functioning to inform people about Japanese Canadians through programs and activities. Includes numerous resources for those interested in Japanese Canadian history. Virtualmuseum.ca, the Virtual Museum of Canada, celebrates the stories and treasures that have come to define Canada over the centuries. Includes exhibits, photos, games, and links to museums. Canada Museums at aam-us.org/about-museum/find-a-museum. Art Gallery of Guelph.ca. BuffaloNationsMuseum.com. corporate.calgarys-tam-pd.com/about-us/park-development/sam-center. humanrights.ca. markhammuseum.ca. niskaanation.ca/niska-museum. pama.peelregion.ca. scienceworld.ca. ualberta.ca/museum/index.html. warmuseum.ca. Canadian Museum websites at blog.feedspot.com/Canadian_museum_blogs. agaconmuseum.org/news. airmuseum.ca/blog. Art Gallery of Nova Scotia.ca/blog. bacchuspagehouse.ca/blog. Bank of Canada Museum.ca/the-museum-blog. bantinghosense.ca/about-2/blog-posts-2. beattymuseum.ubc.ca/connect/blog. gpm-artifacts.blogspot.com. conceptionbaymuseum.com. blog.whistlermuseum.org. bombercommandmuseum.ca/news. Canadian musumofnature.wordpress.com. canoemuseum.ca/blog. childrensmuseum.com/parents-educators/ms-blog. citymuseumedmonton.ca/blog, cmcj.ca/resources/number-articles, dartmouthheritagemuseum.ns.ca/blog, gardnermuseum.on.ca/about-the-museum/blog, glenbow.org/blog, goulbournemuseum.ca/news, hastingsmillmuseum.ca/blog, historymuseum.ca/blog, huroncountymuseum.ca/category/blog, iwaarchive.wordpress.com/blog-2, laclabichemuseum.com/museum-buzz, Lanark Highlands Basketrymuseum.ca/blog, langmusicat.wordpress.com/category/English, lenox-addington.on.ca/museum-archives, manitobamuseum.ca/collections-research/blogs, mocha.ca/about/media, musee-mccord.qc.ca/en/blog, museum.mcmaster.ca/about/number-about-featured-news, museum.novascotia.ca/blog, nbm-mnb.ca/blog, aureliamuseum.org/news-and-media-releases, pdshof.com/blog, revelstokemuseum.ca/curators-blog, rosslandmuseum.ca/news, royalalbertamuseum.ca/blog, saskmuseums.org/blog, stjosephmuseum.ca/blog, sunshinecoastmuseum.ca/blog, textilemuseum.ca/blog, theparismuseum.com/weblog, transconamuseum.mb.ca/blog, trha.ca/trha/blog, ualberta.ca/museum/news/index.html, vanmaritime.com/its-maritime-articles, specific Canadian museum websites, civilization.ca, agriculture.technomuses.ca, Canada Agriculture Museum, aviation.technomuses.ca, Canada Aviation and Space Museum, sciencetech.technomuses.ca, Canada Science and Technology Museum, cci-icc.gc.ca/index-eng.aspx, Canadian Conservation Institute, humanrightsmuseum.ca/home, Canadian Museum for Human Rights, cmcp.gallery.ca/English, Canadian Museum of Contemporary Photography, civilization.ca/home, Canadian Museum of History, PIER21.ca/home, Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21, nature.ca/nature_e.cfm, Canadian Museum of Nature, warmuseum.ca/cwm/index_e.aspx, Canadian War Museum, collectionscanada.gc.ca/index-e.html, Library and Archives Canada/eng/1373394150032, Museum Associations in Canada, national.gallery.ca/English, National Gallery of Canada, mint.ca/store/mint/about-the-mint/visit-the-mint-1200026 #BMIFDV8F, Royal Canadian Mint, museevirtual-virtual-museum.ca/index-eng.jsp, Virtual Museum of Canada, agns.ednet.ns.ca, agns.rdnet.ns.ca, Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, ago.net, Art Gallery of Ontario, glenbow.org, Glenbow Museum, Western Canadian History, artsource.shnova.com, aviation.nmsdc.ca, 613-993-2010, Aviation Museum, Ottawa, baseballhof.ca, calgaryscience.ca, 403-221-3700. Canadianflight.org. canoe.ca/slamwrestling/hellofame.html. chilliwack.museum.bc.ca. civilization.ca, 819-776-7000, Hull, QC, across from Ottawa. dartmouthheritagemuseum.ns.ca. discoverycentre.ns.ca. edmontonseaince.com, 780-451-3344. ednet.nature.ca, 902-424-7353, Museum of Natural History, Halifax. ednet.ns.ca/educ/museum. glenbow.org, 403-268-4100, Calgary. goldfever.on.ca. gold-rush.org, Dawson. gov.nb.ca/nbmuseum, 506-658-1842, St. John. hoff.com, 416-360-7765, Hockey Hall of Fame, Toronto. historymuseum.ca. machinemuseum.net, motorbikes and more, Wetaskiwin, Epub. manitobamuseum.mb.ca, 204-956-2830, Winnipeg. mbam.qc.ca. mccord-museum.qc.ca. mcmichael.com, McMichael Canadian Art Collection.mbzel.qc.ca, Basse Saint Laurent Museum, Contemporary Art and Ethnology. mcq.org, Quebec City Museum of Civilization. mdq.org, Museum of Quebec, Parc des Champs d'Italie. national.gallery.ca, National Gallery of Canada, Ottawa. mmfa.qc.ca/en/index, 800-899 Muse, Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. museum.gov.ns.ca. museumfortextiles.on.ca. nature.ca. nature.museum.gov.ns.ca. nfmuseum.com. nmsdc.com, 613-991-3044, National Museum of Science and Technology, Ottawa. ontariorom.on.ca, Royal Ontario Museum, Toronto, Ontario. osc.on.ca, 416-429-4100, Ontario Science Centre, Toronto. ottawamuseums.com. pier21.ca, Halifax. rbcm.gov.bc.ca, 250-387-3701, Royal British Columbia Museum, Victoria. rom.on.ca, 416-586-8000, Royal Ontario Museum, Toronto. rossfarm.museum.gov.ns.ca. royalbcmuseum.bc.ca. sciencecentre.sk.ca. sciencenorth.on.ca, 705-522-3700, Sudbury. science-tech.nmsdc.ca. textilemuseum.ca. tyrrellmuseum.com, 403-823-7707, Dinosaurs, Drumheller, Epub. vanartgallery.bc.ca. vanmuseum.bc.ca, 604-736-4431, Vancouver Museum. wag.mb.ca, Winnipeg Art Gallery, Winnipeg, Manitoba.warmuseum.ca, 613-776-8600, Ottawa. Chapter 2. Some lists of Canadian museums. A list of Canada museums, no websites. Epub, Calgary, Glenbow Museum, 403-268-4100. Epub, Grande Prairie, The Art Gallery of Grande Prairie, 780-532-8111. epub, Lethbridge, Southern Alberta Art Gallery, 1-403-327-8770. BC, Courtenay, Comox Valley Art Gallery, 250-338-6211. BC, Kamloops, Kamloops Art Gallery, 250-377-2400. BC, Kelowna, Kelowna Art Gallery, 250-762-2226. BC, Prince George, Two Rivers Gallery, 250-614-7800. BC, Victoria, Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, 250-384-4171. BC, Victoria, Royal BC Museum, 250-356-7226. MB, Winnipeg, Winnipeg Art Gallery, 204-786-6641. NS, Halifax, Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, 902-424-5280. On, Aurora, Aurora Cultural Centre, 905-713-1818. On, Grimsby, Grimsby Public Art Gallery, 905-945-3246. On, Hamilton, Art Gallery of Hamilton, 905-527-6610. On, Kleinbug, McMichael Canadian Art Collection, 905-893-1121. On, Mississauga, Art Gallery of Mississauga, 905-896-5088. On, Sarnia, Judith and Norman Alex Art Gallery, 519-336-8127. On, Sudbury, Art Gallery of Sudbury/Gallery d'Art de Sudbury, 705-675-4871. On, Toronto, The Batachou Museum, 416-979-7799. On, Toronto, Craft Ontario, 416-925-4222. On, Toronto, Museum of Contemporary Canadian Art, 416-395-0067. On, Toronto, Museum of Inuit Art, 416-640-1571. On, Toronto, The Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery, 416-973-4949. On, Toronto, YYZ Artists Outlet, 416-598-4546. On, Waterloo, Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery, 519-746-1882. QC, Montreal, Canadian Centre for Architecture, 514-939-7000. QC, Montreal, The McCord Museum of Canadian History, 514-398-7100. SK, Regina, Mackenzie Art Gallery, 306-584-4250. Canada Sports Museums and Halls of Fame. Sportshall.ca, Canada Sports Hall of Fame. Alberta SportsHallOfFame.com, Alberta Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. Aquatic Hall of Fame and Museum of Canada. BobbyOrHallOfFame.com, Bobby Orr Hall of Fame. BCGolfMuseum.org, BC Golf Museum. BCHHF.com, BC Hockey Hall of Fame. BCMinorBaseball.org, BC Minor Baseball Hall of Fame. BCSportsHallOfFame.com, BC Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. BurnabySportsHallOfFame.ca, Burnaby Sports Hall of Fame, British Columbia. BaseballHallOfFame.ca, Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. canoemuseum.net/default.asp, Canadian Canoe Museum. Footballhof.com, Canadian Football Hall of Fame and Museum. cghf.org/default-hallofame.asp, Canadian Golf Hall of Fame and Museum. Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fame.com, Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fame. lacrosse.ca/hall %20 of %20 fame /clhf.htm, Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. cmhf.ca, Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. olympic.ca/en/hof/index.shtml, Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame. skimuseum.ca, Canadian Ski Museum. curling.ca, Curling Hall of Fame and Museum of Canada, Kitchener. glengarrysports.com, Glengarry Sports Hall of Fame, Maxville, Ontario. hhof.com/index.shtml, Hockey Hall of Fame, Toronto. ihhof.com, International Hockey Hall of Fame. hellofame.mb.ca, Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. nbsportshallofame.nb.ca, New Brunswick Sports Hall of Fame. nwosportshallofame.com, Northwestern Ontario Sports Hall of Fame. novascotiasbeerthallofame.com, Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. coda.ab.ca/cop/frm olympic.html, Olympic Hall of Fame and Museum, Calgary. olhof.ca, Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame and Museum. paysportshallofame.ca, Prince Edward Island Sports Hall of Fame. sshfm.com, Saskatchewan Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. sshfm.com/satellitehalls.html, Saskatchewan Satellite Halls of Fame. skatecanada.ca/en/about_skate_canada/hall_of_fame, Skate Canada Hall of Fame. The soccerhalloffame.ca, Soccer Hall of Fame and Museum. ubcsportshallofame.com, University of British Columbia Sports Hall of Fame. white.org, White Museum of the Canadian Rockies, Banff, Alberta. Museum houses the Alpine Club of Canada collection. Nova Scotia Museums. museum.gov.ns.ca, Nova Scotia Museum, 800-632-1114. museum.gov.ns.ca/events. Nova Scotia Heritage.ca. acadianvillage.museum.gov.ns.ca, cardingmill.museum.gov.ns.ca, 902-543-8233. cosset.museum.gov.ns.ca, doryshop.museum.gov.ns.ca. firefighters.museum.gov.ns.ca, fisheries.museum.gov.ns.ca, 866-579-4909. fishermanslife.museum.gov.ns.ca, 889-2053, Jedor area. fundigeo.museum.gov.ns.ca, gristmill.museum.gov.ns.ca, halliburton.museum.gov.ns.ca, highlandvillage.museum.gov.ns.ca, industry.museum.gov.ns.ca, lawrence.museum.gov.ns.ca, maritime.museum.gov.ns.ca, maritime mccukcook.museum.gov.ns.ca. Museum of the Atlantic. meetingplace.museum.gov.ns.ca, museum.gov.ns.ca/arch/blk data, Black settlement in Nova Scotia. museum.gov.ns.ca/Black loyalists. museum.gov.ns.ca/FEMA, Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic. museum.gov.ns.ca/MMA/Titanic/Titanic. museum.gov.ns.ca/MNH, Museum of Natural History. museum.gov.ns.ca/nature/ns birds/b_sites.html, bird watching. museum.gov.ns.ca/mnh/nature/winbird/tips. mvta.net, 384-2006, Moose River Gold Mines Museum, near Elms Vale. nature.museum.gov.ns.ca, 424-3563, Museum of Natural History. northhills.museum.gov.ns.ca, perkins.museum.gov.ns.ca, 902-354-4058. Prescott.museum.gov.ns.ca rossfarm.museum.gov.ns.ca rossthomson.museum.gov.ns.ca shant.museum.gov.ns.ca sharebrookvillage.museum.gov.ns.ca steammill.museum.gov.ns.ca uniac.museum.gov.ns.ca woolenmill.museum.gov.ns.ca Prison museums in Canada. Ancienne Prison de Trois-Rivières, Quebec, Canada. Historic Cornwall Jail, Cornwall, Ontario, Canada. Kingston Penitentiary, Kingston, Ontario, Canada. Prison, constructed 1833 to 1835, Kingston Penitentiary is the oldest standing prison dating to pre-Confederation in Canada. After closing in 2013, the institution began operating tours seasonally from May-October, offering guided tours with online ticketing and tour guides as well as retired correctional staff on site to provide information to guests. Cobourg Jail, Cobourg, Ontario, Canada. Jail, part of the jail is incorporated into the King George Inn, which includes a museum and artifacts from its time as a working jail. 2. Lorignal Old Jail, Orignal, Ontario, Canada. A list of Canada law enforcement museums at en.wikipedia.org/wiki/category:law_enforcement_museums_in_Canada. rcmpmuseum.com, RCMP. Museum and Gift Shop. Fort Battleford. North American Game Warden Museum. RCMP Heritage Centre. Rotary Museum of Police and Corrections. Vancouver Police Museum. Victoria Police Department. Winnipeg Police Museum. Chapter 3. Canada Rome Museums. Alberta. Edmonton. youraga.ca. Art Gallery of Alberta. Manitoba. Winnipeg. humanrights.ca. Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Winnipeg. Plugin.org. Plugin Institute of Contemporary Art. New Brunswick. Fredericton. beaverbrook.artgallery.org/en. Beaverbrook Art Gallery. St. John. nbm-mnb.ca. New Brunswick Museum. Nova Scotia. Halifax. Art Gallery of Nova Scotia.ca. Art Gallery of Nova Scotia. Ontario. Delhi. delhimuseum.ca. Delhi Tobacco Museum and Heritage Centre. Grimsby. grimsby.ca/art-gallery. Grimsby Public Art Gallery. Grimsby. grimsby.ca/museum/main. The Grimsby Museum. Guelph. Art Gallery of Guelph.ca. Art Gallery of Guelph. Hamilton. Art Gallery of Hamilton.com. Art Gallery of Hamilton. Mississauga. Art Gallery of Mississauga.com. Art Gallery of Mississauga. Oakville. oakvillegalleries.com. Oakville Galleries. Ottawa. gallery.ca/en. National Gallery of Canada. Ottawa. oaggow.ca. Ottawa Art Gallery. Owen Sound. tomthomson.org. Tom Thomson Art Gallery. Port Dover. portdovermuseum.ca. Port Dover Harbour Museum. Sault Ste. Marie. bushplane.com. Canadian Bushplane Heritage Centre. Simcoe. nca-ebdm.ca. Norfolk County Archives and Eva Brooke Donnelly Museum. Toronto. agaconmuseum.org. AGACon Museum. Toronto. AGO.ca. Art Gallery of Ontario. Toronto. gardnermuseum.on.ca. Gardner Museum. Toronto. thepowerplant.org. Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery, The. Toronto. rom.on.ca/en Royal Ontario Museum, Toronto. Textilemuseum.ca Textile Museum of Canada, Waterford. Waterfordmuseum.ca Waterford Heritage and Agricultural Museum, Whitby. Stationgallery.ca Station Gallery, Prince Edward Island, Charlottetown. Confederationcentre.com Confederation Centre of the Arts, Quebec. Montreal. mccord-museum.qc.ca/fr McCord Stewart Museum, Montreal. mbam.qc.ca/en Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, Quebec. mnbac.org Musée National des Beaux-Arts du Québec, Quebec City. Morin.org Morin Centre, Quebec City. mcq.org Musée de la Civilisation, Saint-Jérôme. Musée Laurentide.ca Musée d'Art Contemporain des Laurentides, Saskatchewan. Regina. Mackenzie.art Mackenzie Art Gallery, Saskatoon. remaimodern.org Remai Modern. Chapter 4 More Canadian Museums. Canada Maritime Museums. marmuseum.ca Marine Museum of the Great Lakes, Kingston, Ontario, Canada. maritimemuseum.novascotia.ca Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. vancouvermaritimemuseum.com Vancouver Maritime Museum, Vancouver, Canada. aandc.org Archives and Collections Society, ONT. agaofsalemuseum.ca Age of Sail Museum NS, The Age of Sail Museum, in Port Grieville, Nova Scotia. albertcountymuseum.ca Albert County Museum, NB. atlanticchallenge.org Atlantic Challenge, ONT. bytownmuseum.com Bytown Museum, ONT. canoemuseum.net Canoe Museum, ONT. cbmuseums.tripod.com/lmm.html, Louisbourg Marine Museum, NS. classicboats.org Cowichan Bay Maritime Centre, BC. discoveryharbour.on.ca/English, Discovery Harbour, ONT. doorsopenniagara.com/welland_Carnegie_WM.htm, Welland Historical Museum and NBSP, ONT. dorishop.com, Dory Shop, the, NS. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/hmcs_Fraser_left _DDH_233 right HMCS Fraser, DDE 233, later DDH 233, NS. fishermanslife.museum.gov.ns.ca, Fisherman's Life. Canada Car Museums. Reynolds Alberta Museum. Box 6360. Wetaskiwin, UB T9A2G1. 780-361-1351. Canada Rail Museums. Alberta Central Railway Museum, Wetaskiwin, Alberta. Alberta Prairie Railway, Stettler, Alberta. Alberta Railway Museum, Edmonton, Alberta. Canadian Museum of Rail Travel, Cranbrook, British Columbia. Canadian Railway Museum, St. Constant, Quebec. Champion Park, Okotoks, Alberta. Edmonton Radial Railway Society, Edmonton, Alberta. Elgin County Railway Museum, St. Thomas, Ontario. Halton County Radial Railway, Milton, Ontario. John Street Roundhouse, Toronto, Ontario. New Brunswick Railway Museum, Hillsborough, New Brunswick. Northern Ontario Railroad Museum, Greater Sudbury, Ontario. Pomo Museum, Port Moody, British Columbia. Railway Coastal Museum, St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Railway Museum of Eastern Ontario, Smiths Falls, Ontario. Revelstoke Railway Museum, Revelstoke, British Columbia. Saskatchewan Railway Museum, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Toronto Railway Museum, Toronto, Ontario. West Coast Railway Heritage Park, Squamish, British Columbia. Winnipeg Railway Museum, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Canadian Tourist Train Tours and Train Museums. UbSteamTrain.com, Alberta Central Railway Excursions, Stettler, UB. UbSteamTrain.com, Alberta Prairie Steam Train. AlgomaCanyonTourTrain.com, Algoma Central Railway, on. albernieheritage.com/rail.shtml, Alberni Pacific Railway and McLean's Mill National Historic Site. bcrockies.com/attractions/bavarian.html, Bavarian City Mining Railway. cprtours.com, Royal Canadian Pacific. krausnest.bc.ca/cmrt, Canadian Museum of Rail Travel, Cranbrook, BC. Preserving Canada's Railway. ecrm.mg.net, Elgin County Railroad Museum, St. Thomas, on. fortress.uccb.ns.ca/historic/s_l.html, Sydney and Louisbourg Railway Station and Museum, Louisbourg, NS. fortsteel.bc.ca, Fort Steele Heritage Town. gov.edmonton.ab.ca/fort, Fort Edmonton Park, Edmonton, Ib. Historical Park with Steam Railroad. hcry.org, Halton County Radial Railway, Milton, on. heritagepark.ab.ca, Heritage Park Historical Village, Calgary, Ib. camrail.com, Kamloops Heritage Railway. kettlevalleyrail.org, Kettle Valley Steam Railway, BC. kettlevalleyrail.org, Kettle Valley Steam Railway, Summerland, BC. The Kettle Valley Steam Railway. komoka-railmuseum.ca, Komoka Railway Museum, Komoka, on. modeltrainsmuseum.bc.ca/trains/index.html, Granville Island Model Trains Museum, Vancouver, BC. museum.gov.ns.ca/moi/index.htm, Nova Scotia Museum of Industry, Stellarton, NS. niagaraparks.com/nfgg/phi-railway.php, Falls Incline Railway, on. okanaganwinetrain.com, Okanagan Wine Train. ontarionorthland.ca/en/rail passenger/northlander/northlander.html, Northlander, Ontario. ontarionorthland.ca/en/rail passenger/pbx/polarbearexpress.html, Polar Bear Express, on. osawippi.com, Osawapi Express Dining Cars, Orillia, on. pdcrailway.com, Prairie Dog Central, Manitoba. pgrfm.bc.ca, Prince George Railway and Forestry Museum, Prince George, BC. psdr.on.ca, Port Stanley Terminal, Port Stanley, on. psdr.on.ca, Port Stanley Terminal Rail, on. railwaycapital.com, St. Thomas, Ontario. railwaymuseum.com, Revelstoke Railway Museum, Revelstoke, BC. RockyMountainER.com, Rocky Mountaineer Rail Tours. SandonBC.com, Sandon Historic Site, Vintage Steam Train Exhibit, Sandon, BC. SCIENCE-TECH.NMSDC.ca, Canada's National Museum of Science and Technology, Ottawa, on. Shorar.ca, Salem and Hillsborough Railroad, Hillsborough, New Brunswick. Snowtrain.com, Snowtrain, on. Steamtrain.ca, Hull Chelsea Wakefield Steam Train, Hull, QC. Steamtrain.com, South Simcoe Railway, the railway runs from Tottenham to Beaton, on. Steamtrain.com, South Simcoe Steam Train, on. STEAM-TRAIN.org, Southern Ontario Locomotive Restoration Society, St. Thomas, on. Timbertrain.com, Timber Train, on QC. Vacationsbyrail.com Calgary, epub. ValleyRoundhouse.com, Three Valley Gap Railway Roundhouse, Revelstoke, BC. VintageLocomotiveSociety.mb.ca, Prairie Dog Central Steam Museum Train, Winnipeg, MB. WCRA.org/heritage/index.htm, West Coast Railway Heritage Park, Squamish, BC. WhistlerMountaineer.com, Whistler Mountaineer. WhitePassRailroad.com, White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad. The White Pass and Yukon Route is a narrow-gauge railroad running from Skagway to Whitehorse, the capital of the Yukon. WhitePassRailroad.com, White Pass and Yukon Routes. ydhr.on.ca, York-Durham Heritage Railway.